Okay, hello friends. This is Ray Lutz with Citizens Oversight. Today we're going to be giving a presentation, really a kickoff announcement of AuditEngine, which is a pretty amazing new tool that we have in order to verify elections. I was looking at the date and I noticed that a year ago today, I sort of reused this presentation, and it was there at the Voters' Rights Task Force meeting in Berkeley when I gave a kickoff announcement. So it's been a year of pretty hard work on this, and so hopefully you'll enjoy this presentation. So first of all, my background really quick. I'm not going to dwell on this, but I'm a nerd. Nerd alert here. A master's degree in electronics and computer engineering. Was involved a lot of the time in printer technology, printer, scanner, fax copier kind of technology. And then after that, I got involved more into politics and into this election integrity category. I've been doing this pretty hard since the mid-aughts, around 2005. So I've been about 15 years of working in this area. So we're going to go through AuditEngine service. And then I'm going to do a terminology and basic topics. And I'm kind of run this differently because it takes some time to run some of the demonstrations. And so what I'm going to do is actually start one right now, and then we'll come back to it in a minute because it does take a few minutes to get going. So I'm going to go over to the actual AuditEngine and kind of just show you a little bit right now of how this works, just jumping right in, and then we'll go over some more of the terminology in a bit. I've set up a few elections, and this is just information about the election. We're going to be working on this Volusia County in Florida election right here. And this first screen, you set up the election, and this is just information about the election, some metadata, what kind it is, when it happened. We have the idea of public, open or closed. We really haven't implemented anything other than public, meaning the public can get in and look at the data. Then the vendor, where it is, this is a global type of an application. It can be run anywhere, not just in the United States if they have the kind of equipment that it supports, and then where it is. Okay, so that's really all you have in information about the election. But then we go over to, there's some election files which have already been uploaded. We'll go over this in a second, but these are the ballot images. In this case, we don't have a cast vote record. Now I'm going to tell you what these things mean in a minute. I just want to get this part started so we can let it run. And then there's some audit jobs, and we're going to choose the Volusia election. And here's just the basic information about that specific election. The audit, of the election, you choose which election you're working on here. And then this is that information we set up before. The job files include the other types of files other than ballot images and job control. Now we're just going to get this started. I know I'm jumping way ahead here, but I want to get these that have already been run. I just want to show you there's a pre-check, which doesn't take very long, already done. But then the pre-scan here, we're going to start that one. And we're going to go look at what's happening here. So this is up in the cloud, in the server. It's starting here. And it's going to start doing essentially a scan of about, I think it's 48,000 ballots from Volusia County. It's not all of them. This is actually starting a whole bunch of jobs. And we're going to let them all start, and then you can see them start to run. Okay, it started basically now 244 computers running in parallel. Let me get this other person in here. So it started that, and we should see here at the after 10 seconds, it will give us an update. Okay, so now you see it's running 244 processes. So we're going to let that run while I continue with my presentation. It's going to take a few minutes to get done. Now let's go back to what I was telling you, and we'll pick up on some more of this information that will give you kind of fill in the blanks of what you just saw. So essentially this AuditEngine service, you're going to see a demonstration of it here. We started that. Go over the terminology and the roles. This is kind of important, like how can you be involved? What are the different roles of people which will be involved in this? There's various different roles. And then how can we deploy it in this election cycle? Very, very important. And I already said it was announced last time. Skipping through here. Now, what is a ballot image audit? I want to make sure we cover that. First of all, a ballot image is a relatively high resolution image of a hand-marked paper ballot. It used to be that they used this term ballot image to refer to a memory image of a DRE or direct, basically a touchscreen machine. They used to use that same term for that, and that's been a bit of a problem to get away from that. But most modern equipment produces these images, and I'm talking about more than 99% of the top counties in the top 10 states that we're looking at in this election. So they are producing them. And then what does a ballot image audit do is exhaustively recompute the result of the election by retabulating all of the ballot images. A picture helps, all right? So, and you have a paper ballot here, and I'm actually want to just diverge from this just for a quick second and show you a picture of a or actually an actual ballot image. And why isn't, here it is. I gotta get it up on that side though. You know what happens is that Zoom, let me just, I have to let participants in here. Admit, okay. So when I click on this, it actually opens, but it's behind this little screen here. So I can't, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna move that into range so you can see it. Okay, here is the actual ballot image. This is a Dominion manufacturer type. You can see there's these alignment blocks in the corners. That's one of the tip-offs that it's theirs. These are timing marks around the sides of this type, and those are actually pretty important for us. And then at the bottom down here, there's more timing marks, but there's this area at the bottom right here, and this is actually their sort of custom barcode. This identifies this style of ballot, and it actually produces this number right here, 22405. That indicates that this is a democratic Chinese language ballot. It's a bilingual, as you can see. That helps us, by the way, wouldn't it? Because it'd be hard to know what they are if it was just all Chinese, although some of them are done that way. And this is the page 1. So then on page 2, there's a second back of this piece of paper. And in this particular vendor, they have a page 3, which is what they call the audit mark. And it actually shows what the votes were in a summary. All right, this is not a very convenient format though, because it's an image. You'd have to read this. Let's see, let me get these people in from the waiting room. Okay, now that is a ballot image. This is, as I said, the Dominion type, and the other major type is ES&S. Those are the two that we're supporting right now. So with that said, let's go back to this. We have a voter here, and that should be a pen, not a pencil, but that was the convenient image that I had. So don't get distracted by that pencil right there. Then hand-marked paper ballots, or it could be a BMD ballot marking device. I didn't include that. Please mute if you haven't already. Then in the voting system, they scan them, create a ballot image, and then they go through a vote extraction, which means recognizing the bubbles, what has been marked, recognizing voter intent, In some states, it's not voter intent, it's just whether or not it's been, whether or not it's a mark. Some states don't deal with voter intent at all. And then they create the cast vote record, which is actually a computer file, but it's basically a listing of what the votes were for that ballot. And then the results, they add them up. So this is the main high-level flow of processing ballots. What we do is we get an upload of the ballot images. We could do a style analysis, and then we extract the vote just like they did, create our own cast vote records and compare them, and then get a discrepancy report. Now, there's a few variations to this. And one of them is that we may not have this cast vote record file, so we wouldn't be able to compare, but we'd still be able to give our own results here, and we can compare the official results with our results. And then one thing I will say is that this box here that says style analysis is the hard part. It's very easy, actually, once we know where the bubbles are, to go over and pull them out and look at them. And fortunately, the vendors know exactly where they put the bubbles because they printed the ballots and designed them. We don't have that luxury. We have to figure out where the bubbles are. All right, so that's part of the process that we're going to look at. Now, next slide. Some of the characteristics of these ballot image audits. They go over all the contests. You don't have to, but you can look at all the contests because you're going to look at all the ballots that you can get. And you can deal with even the small ones down to really tiny contests. And you can find the ballots that deal with those contests because they may be really hard to find amongst many of the other ballots. This occurred in Los Angeles, where they're now using voting centers. They had the Long Beach tax initiative on the ballot. It only won by 16 votes. They wanted to go back and look at it, but all the ballots were so mixed up amongst all these different voting centers, it was going to be very costly. I think it was $200,000 just to go find the ballots to see if that was right. This doesn't have that problem because we can actually find those ballots pretty easily. When you do one of these, it doesn't explode. I mean, the amount of work required is limited to analyzing the set and getting it to run. Mostly we're using computer resources here, not human beings. So it doesn't explode into those costly hand counts like a risk limiting audit might. And then it can detect the issues that can happen, voter intent issues with whether they marked it or not, we can check that. Most of the election processing errors and nearly all malicious attacks, anything that modifies the central tabulator alone, the simple ones it can find. And here's something that it minimizes innocent fix-up errors. Now, what is an innocent fix-up? This is a term I designed because I didn't want to make it sound like the election officials were maliciously fixing up the audit or seeking a clean audit, even though that's what they were doing. What they were doing was innocently fixing things. Now, these workers, they are working day in and day out to try to fix issues that are there as they're processing the ballot. And all of a sudden in the audit, they're told that you're not supposed to fix anything. And that's sort of hard for them to understand. You're not supposed to fix things in the audit. You're supposed to report the discrepancies without fixing them. Instead, what they do is they just fix that one discrepancy and say, now it's clean. And this does not work, but this is what we've seen a lot. This is compatible with all those precinct scanners that are around, especially those that don't keep the ballots in order and don't have a way to mark them. And that's hard for risk limiting audits to deal with that issue. Now, ballot images, what is the issue with them? Well, we know that now making them, 99% of the largest counties in the top 10 battleground states in this election use equipment that creates ballot images. So this is very good news. We've gotten past the the kind of technology curve here that where before, like years ago, we said, let's do this, but no one was making ballot images, so we couldn't do it. The second step was kind of the big challenge, was to save them. We need these counties not to delete them. And this is something where John Brakey, I'm glad he's on the call because he can speak to this later where we are on that. But a lot of these counties have been just deleting these. Then, of course, you can't do this sort of an audit. It's just ridiculous that that would be allowed. And thirdly, and this is kind of hard at this point in time, is getting them. Can we get them out of their hands? And this is a challenge in this election because time has not progressed where it's complete transparency. If we'll ever get there, I hope we do. But we'll say that processing the poll tapes is a key aspect to allow legal challenges to proceed and then acquire the ballot images. In those states where there's a really short time frame, we need to go after those poll tapes. I'm not going to diverge onto that right now, but we'll come back and talk about the poll tapes question in a minute, later on. What you can do in this, though, is validate the ballot images by checking them with some paper. And there's a couple of ways to do that, but there is a concern that, oh, maybe somebody hacked the ballot images. Then you could do this consistency check between the ballot images and the cast vote records, and everything would look fine. But since the ballot images are changed, then you wouldn't know. Well, you can go back and check them with the paper, and there's a couple ways to do that. One of them is to rescan a few precincts and get a different scanner that isn't hacked, and then compare it that way. Very quick to do that if we did it. Okay, now what we're going to do now is go back over and see where we are on that run, and then I'll tell you what we got there. So, and what we did. So this actually did complete. We processed 48,549 records out of 2 archives. Archive meaning a zip archive of ballot images that we obtained from the elections officials. And we found that there was no duplicate IDs. We didn't have any cast vote record files. We didn't get those in this case. And this does not, by the way, represent all of the ballots, unfortunately, in this contest. There was some like 40,000 ballots that we didn't get in another archive. Apparently, we tried getting it, and then somebody, deleted it and so forth. We could go back and get it, but this is still a good, interesting thing to run as it is. There are 74 precincts that represented by these ballots, and the 2 parties, it's a partisan contest. This was in the primary. Now we boiled it down to 3 styles. There's only 3 styles in this contest, in this election, just 3, even though there's 149 different ballot card codes. That is the actual number on the ballot, that number of codes. And then this says that there was 2 BMD, that is ballot marking device, that sort of barcoded ballots. And there's probably a lot more of those in the other set, I'm not sure. We had a number of corrupted ballots. You can see them here. Only 10 out of 48,000 did we not quite read correctly. There was something wrong with our algorithm in terms of reading them. We're working on improving this, but it's only 10 out of 48,000. And if we did want to really get it down to covering those last 10, then we could go look at them and see exactly what's wrong. But we are refining our methodology for doing alignment, searching for those alignment blocks that I showed you, for example, and getting the timing marks out of these. And this is a kind of ES&S ballot vendor election. Going up to the top here, we can look at the vendor. These are all the settings. Vendor is ES&S, which is not the type of ballot that I showed you, but they do have a need for those timing marks. And just looking through this, you can see that that we started all of these jobs, 244 jobs, and then here is it launching the jobs, and then later getting all the information back. And you know, if you want, you can, when you're running it, you can sit and watch it run. Now, this phase of the processing is just a pre-scan. It's what we call a pre-scan. And that actually just looks at the frame, the outside frame of the ballot, without looking at the votes on the inside. So we have somebody at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the waiting room. I hope it's not someone that's going to drive us nuts. Okay, so anyway, we have, let me show you real quick what that file looks like. And actually, I've already downloaded it here, so we can quickly take a look at it. I just got to get this Zoom thing out of the way so I can see it. What happens with Zoom is it overwrites everything. I don't think you can see that over there. Okay, and now there's where it is. And let me get this file that I downloaded. All right, so here is the BIF file. I think you can see that there. Now, what is the BIF file? This is a ballot information file. This is what we just generated. We scanned over 48,000 ballots, and we created an exhaustive list, basically an inventory of all the ballots. We have the archive where we found it, the number of the ballot, the file path within the archive of where it is. There is no CVR file, so that we don't have that. Which precinct, which party, what style, that we've boiled it down to. The card code, you can see all these card codes. This is actually what we read off of that little barcode on the ballot. And then it's sheet 0. Sometimes there's multiple sheets and they get identified. I hear in Broward County, they have something like 7 sheets this election. And whether it's a ballot marking device ballot or not. Now for ES&S, we find it's fairly easy to figure this out just by the size of the file. If the file is smaller, it's a BMD, and if it's bigger, then it's the other hand mark type. So we can, without even looking at the ballot, we can figure out if it's a BMD. And that's how we're doing it in this case. And then if there are any errors, then we have the details there of what the errors were. And indeed, there's probably going to be those 10 that we saw. It's actually in the other archive. So this is a result. This is the data file, which lists all of the ballots and where we find them, what is the style, the card code on them, the barcode, anything that we can find on the ballot, but not including any of the voting stuff, because we don't know how to interpret that yet. All right, then the next step is that we, no, don't want you to see that there. That is, all right. What is going on here?
Ray, there's a bunch of questions in the chat. It might be a good moment to stop and look at some.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you for that, that idea. Yeah, so let's stop there. That's good idea to stop and ask those questions. And actually, so here we go. The 244 computers, are they my computers, Volusia County's computers, or something else? They are cloud computers. They are things called Lambdas, and they are provided by the Amazon Web Services cloud. You'd be surprised all the stuff that Amazon has. So Amazon is the leader, even surpassing Google and Microsoft and anyone else in terms of cloud-based services. And they have a service called Lambdas, and you can order and use up to 1,000 computers at a time. You can launch out 1,000 jobs, and then you can get the results back. You can only use those computers for a maximum of 15 minutes. So this is not where you get a computer for a long time. You get to use it for up to 15 minutes. That's the maximum. If you're not done by then, forget it. Okay, so it goes away. Now, these are super reliable because if there was a problem, it's pulled out, you know, and your job may not complete on that one. You have to start another one, but you never have a situation where you're sitting on a computer that doesn't work at all. So that's the story with the 244 computers. They do charge you by the 100 millisecond increment, 1/10 of a second. So every 1/10 of a second, they're charging you for every computer that you're using. So it isn't astronomical, but it isn't something you want to just do all the time, over and over and over, because of course it does cost. This is being recorded, and then we have so our members of the computer, we're going to go over the roles in a minute, and I can do that after we go through this. The innocent fix-up issue is important. So let's go over that a little bit more, because this is super important. Why is the innocent fix-up issue something that we really have to worry about? The problem is that what is commonly happening is that, as I say, workers will be in charge of doing the audit, and it's actually their own work that they're auditing. And this is like asking people, you know, to correct their own homework and then give themselves a grade. And if they miss something, when they check it with the correct answers, mark it wrong, or is that person going to be tempted to fix the problem with the correct answers and say they got the test right? Now, if you're correcting problems all the time, like you say, oh, well, we were missing that ballot. Okay, fix it. All day long, day in and day out, they're fixing problems throughout these elections. All of a sudden in the audit, this is like checking the results of your test. And so then they tend to just fix the results so that the audit comes out clean. They may not even know that they're doing this. One of the things that happened in Los Angeles is that if there was a problem with a precinct that they had hand tallied, then they would just rescan it and get a new report from the scanner about what the results were. And then they would say, oh, gee, now it matches. So it's no harm done. I'm just going to say that it's correct. No, that's not right. Because think about it. If the tabulation, the tabulator computer had been changed, then on the first round, the ballots would not match the tabulation. But if then you run them back through and get a new tabulation, basically you're changing the answer there. And so they didn't even realize that they're doing it. I think they still do it this way. So it will cover up any hack, complete, no matter how large, their system will cover it up so no one will ever find it. So that's why it's super important. Now, this doesn't happen with this system because there isn't really an opportunity to make corrections like that. Number one, when you're doing a statistical audit, you're just getting a sample. And so you figure, well, the sample matches, so now all the rest of them are okay. In this system, there is no sampling. You're looking at them all. Now, if you fix anything and you say that ballot didn't match, that's fine to do. You can do that all day long and fix what the results were. And say, but you're not going to say, oh, the original results were correct. You don't want to fix that. But if there was a ballot, you want to say, here's how it should be interpreted, you can do that part. This is from Darlene. Is all of this high-level information determined during the run of the computer on the data? This first step is actually pretty easy to set up because there really is these ballot frames that we have. I mean, there's different length ballots. That's one of the parameters that might be an issue that you might have to set. But basically, the surrounding border and the barcodes are always the same. So we can run it through this pre-scan without really doing any, you know, lots of different work. And I'll go over the roles in a minute of how different people can be involved. Is this similar to the system that election clerks are using? Is the question from Mark Shipley. Yes, it is, but not at this point. In other words, they don't have to do this pre-scan or what I'll show you, which is the styles generation. We did just now, we did a pre-check, which just basically checks over that the files are there. And we just did the pre-scan, which we got the BIF files out of that. And now we can reset this and we can start this generating the styles, and we'll let that run. This is the next phase, and we'll let this run while we do some more answering of questions. Here it's starting, and then it's going ahead and processing 2 styles, basically. This was already figured out so that the style numbers that they have, we boiled it down to just 2. I think it was 2 or 3 styles. Essentially, it's just those 2 partisan races on this ballot. We'll look at it in a second. All right, so more on the chat questions. Lulu says, will you be doing a risk limiting audit of AuditEngine to look at certain number of ballots by hand to make sure the software hasn't made errors? We can't do a risk limiting audit of the ballots because we don't have them. So if we could get the ballots, we could. But the hard part is that getting to the ballots, we found, has been very, very basically impossible. I mean, some states allow you to get to the ballots. Now, if they do their own audit, though, if they do their own audit, and if it's any good, they have proven to that extent that the ballot images are okay, because the ballot images are in the middle of their process. So you can't compare the ballots to the end without also proving that the middle was okay. So therefore, if they do a risk limiting audit, or really any kind of the audit to the extent that that proves anything, it also proves that the ballot images are okay. We will have this recorded and posted, so I will have that sent around for anyone else that's there. Now, I did see that there were some hands raised, perhaps. Let me see in the participant box if there was any hands raised. If you do want to speak, I thought maybe John McCarthy, were you trying to raise your hand there? I thought I saw it popping up.
No, that was accidental.
Oh, okay, good enough. All right. So, so then, yeah. So that, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, because maybe I kind of misspoke, or I didn't answer my question clearly.
Oh, okay.
I just meant, we all know that all software can make mistakes or have coding errors or, you know, weird glitches. So I'm just wondering if you're going to do some type of hand-to-eye audit of the digital ballot images that you do have in each process. Is there going to be like a routine check to check a certain number of the digital ballot images by hand against what the audit engine is, how the audit engine is reading them?
Yeah, you can do that. Actually, it kind of happens. This is a matter of course on this. And let me show you what happens here. So when we're generating the styles, which is just successfully completed, let's just look at the log file really quick of what happened. It went through, it did run some lambdas. It was only running 2 lambdas in this case instead of 244. And those are those separate computers. They call them lambdas. So, you know, a lambda means a separate computer. And we generated these 2 chunks. Now, as a result of this, we end up with a number of proofs, and I'll show you one of them.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, thank you very much. That helps, doesn't it? So you didn't get to see all that. Now I'm sharing. Okay, let me get this chat box out. I got a chat box here. I don't think you can see it. I need to get that out of the way. No, that's the wrong thing to move. Here we go. Okay, so in this election, this is a very simple election because this is one of the ballots here. And this has a, here is a precinct name. And what we end up doing is making these, what we call red lines. They actually are red and blue lines. But we need humans to actually look at these. Now, the computer tries to figure out what the contest is and what each of these options are and where they are. Now, it does it in this case. What we're doing is we're doing what we're calling OCR first methodology, which is kind of a more recent kind of way of doing it. And let me tell you what that is, first of all, because it is kind of important to know if you're using this. First of all, what we started with was a graphics first method, where we first looked at the graphics, we looked at these boxes, and at that time we were doing a Dane County election. And I'm just going to go look at the Dane County ballots super quick here and show you, because that's the other type of ballot too. And it can be very instructive to see that. So I'm going to look at one of these ballots here just to show you what they look like. All right, so this is the ES&S. We looked at Dominion before. ES&S does not have those big alignment blocks. And on this side, some of these timing marks are longer than the other ones. So those make a number. This is actually like a 1, and this is like a 0. And then it comes up that this sequence here of 1 0 0 0 0 1 da 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 creates the number 1, which is the style in this case, and it's actually printed on the ballot over here. So we know how to decode this and get that number 1 out of it. Now you can see in this type of a layout on their ballot, they have surrounded everything with a box. And when we started, this was the first set that we started with. What we did was this sort of look for the boxes first approach, where we got all the boxes figured out. And then we went in and looked in each box and said, okay, is that, can we see the name there? And then figure out where the bubble is accordingly. In this newer approach, we don't have those boxes. And so we do an OCR first. In other words, we look for the strings first, then we figure out where it is. So and in this case also the words are pretty clear. In those first round that we had, we couldn't read a lot of the stuff because it was really bad scans. It's another one of those tricky things that you come across, is that the scans sometimes are really pretty bad. So in this case, so you see that we've identified that Bill Weld is this one, and that's his the correct little bubble, and that this code right here is the code that will appear in the barcode. And this barcode number, when you get a BMD device, those barcoded ballots, they have a number that's related to the position of this bubble on this style. And it changes from style to style if you have a more complex election. So in this election, we just have this style here, which is the Republican race, and we have one for the Democratic race. There's 2 styles. And so that's all we have to check. We've got to check that these bubbles are registered into the right place. Now, so that is the result of generating the styles, are those red lines. And the other thing that we get out of it is a file that says where all the bubbles are. After we've done that and we've figured out where all the bubbles are, then we can extract the vote. This is what the election officials, this is the only step they have to do, because they know where the bubbles are already because they printed the ballots, and their election management system knows where the coordinates are of those ballots. We don't. We have to go through this first part to figure it out. So I will start that process there by clicking that. And then it launches again. This time, not just looking at the frame of the ballot, but going through the entire ballot. And the first step of this is making up the task list, basically, which we call chunks, that will be processed. And then after those chunks are processed, it generates the chunks for the two archives, splitting them up into 200 ballots each. And then you can see down here, it's launching the lambdas. It's going to launch the same number, I believe, the same number of 244 lambdas. It does it pretty fast, but this screen doesn't keep up with it. It gets updated less often. All right, now it looks like it's probably completed launching them all. And after 10 seconds, we'll get an update of telling us how it's doing. Let's look at the first update, and then we'll go on to answer some more questions. There it is. So we've got 244 computers processing. And in this case, it's actually not just looking at the frame, but going in and looking for those bubbles and then pulling out the result of the bubbles. All right, now we close that. Now let's go back to the question, and going back to your question, Lulu, can you check it? Well, yeah, you can go ahead and check our result against every single image, but the first thing you can do is check see the ones that we disagree on. What are the ones that we disagree with the official result? We would go back and look at those first. We're trying to make this as transparent as possible and let everybody see the data. So you can look at the data and see, how it was interpreted. In fact, this is very compatible with, your own. Let's go over to the regular screen here so we can maybe see some other things that I'm saying. So, yeah, what we would like to do is get a secondary also to guard against the ballot images being possibly hacked. We could get a secondary scan of it from a different scanner and check those batches against the result here and just to compare to make sure. That would be a fast way to do it. Stephen Rosenfeld, Ray, what do you say to critics who don't want to try to use any digital records to verify the result? Why don't you, Stephen, you're on the line. Why don't you explain that and just ask the question?
Yeah, thanks. Listen, I first want to praise you for all the work that you've done here. This has evolved exponentially since the last year, and it's really remarkable to see it. So it's really impressive. What I'm referring to is basically the verified voting world and people like Alex Halderman and people who basically will go to great lengths to basically not even acknowledge that there are these digital records that are embedded in 99% of the voting systems that we're using now with paper ballots. So they basically don't want to acknowledge these analytics exist. The images are not even the full galaxy of analytics. There's event logs and all kinds of things. And I was at DEF CON the last time there was a DEF CON, and some Halderman students were presenting these papers to attack Clear Ballot. And basically that's a company that was founded by Larry Moore, and they do exactly what you just said. They actually do a second scan of the underlying paper with a separate scanner, and they try to then compare the results. And it's almost like you're dealing with fundamentalists here who can't see any middle ground between using the best of analog and the best of digital, intelligence and technology for the public's benefit. So I just wonder about that. I mean, this is a debate that will obviously unfold more after this election is over. But if you're in Dane County and perhaps other swing states and you're using this technology, it might be really important, just like John Brakey won that litigation in Florida, to preserve the digital records in the 8 largest counties should there be a presidential recount. So I just wanted to ask the question because a lot of people don't even want to acknowledge the possibilities of what you put here. And when I saw these several years ago, I just thought, wow, this is what people in election, been working in elections, have been looking for, since Florida and since Ohio in 2004. So that's where the question comes from. Sorry for that long explanation, but
Okay,
that's
well, no, and I understand, I've read those and I understand because I've actually had some lengthy discussions with these people about the viability of this. And what I do is I usually say, look, this is a consistency check between two states of the data. One is digital record of the ballot images and the cast vote record after that. And there's a lot of stuff in between those 2 points. The ballot images are about as far back as you can go in time. Just before, right after the voter casts his vote and it gets scanned, if they're in the polling place, or as soon as it's received, it gets scanned. That ballot image is created. There's a whole bunch of storing the data, adding it up and everything else before they get the final result. And we're going back in time as much as possible to get to that very, very first digital record. There are also some things that I propose to try to secure those ballot images using cryptographic means, such that it would be extremely hard to change them once they get secure. And these are now tried and true methodology that can secure things like that. So that's how I think, as you say, I do believe that you've got a point in that it's usually fundamentalists or somebody who has maybe a stake in it the other way. And so I think just over time, maybe they'll come around a little bit more to this point of view. This whole project was a little bit of an outlier from common thinking here. I didn't get very many people initially on board saying, yeah, that's a great thing to do. They were all doing the risk limiting audit, approach. And I got 3 people in the rating room. Okay, so let's get them in. Sorry if these people have waited at all. I think over time this day will come around. That's my hope anyway. We have to demonstrate this and show, but remember, this is a little bit different than those other things too. We're kind of operating from a citizen and outsider oversight. Now, no one's going to take our conclusion and change the election results. That's not going to happen. What we would be able to say is that if we do find something, then people were going to be interested in taking a harder look at it. If we don't find anything, that doesn't mean that we have guaranteed that nothing has happened. I mean, this is the case with every kind of a check. You cannot guarantee with any kind of a check that you've checked everything. It doesn't work that way. You can say my check checks this stuff, and within that range, we know what happens. That's as far as you can go. And if it does check out, then you can say within this range, it's checked. Now, what Lulu is saying is true. Our stuff can make mistakes too. And we do have this phase of the styles generation that it's a little bit tricky to get the styles figured out at first. And that is something I go over a little bit more maybe with you, because it's been the harder part of this. It's been the harder part of it. Now, okay, so let's look at what we got going here. We just finished the extraction of the vote. And as a result of that, we got 244 lambdas finished, all of them successful. What it does then, okay, so each one of these lambdas is assigned 200 ballots. It goes out to the archives and pulls them out of the zip archives, and then looks at them and generates a section of a cast vote record, what we call marks. And that section is those 200 ballots, the results. It also produces its own log file and exception report for that lambda. And at the end here, we have to pull those all together. We have to get all the 244, however many ran, and pull together all of the log files, all of the exception reports, and all of the results. And just to I think I have this also in an easy place so I can just look at it, except it's hard because of the Zoom thing here gets in my way. Let me see if I have it already downloaded. I don't see it here offhand. So what we'll do is instead, I'll show you where it is. And this is something that we need to get fixed on our system. First, let me get these other people into the waiting room. I don't know why Susan Pinchon keeps needing to be coming in, but that's fine. What you have in the world of Amazon Web Services is a major offering called S3, and S3 are storage buckets out in the cloud. And when we get this job done, we have things put into the bucket for Volusia County here. So here's the BIF files. So by putting it up on the cloud, of course, that makes it all public and available for anybody to look at. We have the ballot images, the BIF files, and the exception reports. And then going back up to out of that, we have the marks. And this is what we just generated. And here were all the chunks, the 244 chunks, which are collected together into these individual marks, basically data files. And let me download one of those and then open it. And so then you can see what are the marks. This is a result of extraction. This is like a cast vote record, but it's in our own format because we have to get it split up amongst those various computers and then also have a form that we can easily combine. We have here a ballot ID, and you can see this one is the same for 17 records, I guess. The style of that ballot, what precinct it's in, and then this is the only contest on the ballot. In this case, there's only one. And then for each option in that contest, which were the candidates, what was the mark? Here it says it found a definite mark for Michael Bloomberg, 1 vote, number of votes, and we got a pixelmetric value of 434. That's just a number. We can see these other ones weren't 0. That's because it did see something there, but it was just the empty bubble. And you can see there's a big difference between an empty bubble and a filled bubble. It's not always going to be the same number, and this is why we use this thing called adaptive thresholding. And then on this particular race, there was no overvotes or undervotes. This is actually, this first record only deals with those. But this is how far in pixels we had to realign those bubbles on the ballot because this particular ballot was a little bit stretched by 11 pixels before it got to that one. Now, if these are too big, these are pretty big on this first ballot. It might be that it got misregistered. It was not registered correctly. Here's one that's off by 53. There's no mark there, but that likely is a misregistration. So this is stuff that we're still looking at how to refine that so that they don't get off. And we do have some new algorithms that we're looking at for doing that. But let's take a look at that because I'm a little bit, this is interesting that these numbers are so large. What we need to do is find ballot ID number 22304. This is going to be in basically an archive -1, so we know where to look. And and then we can go look at that ballot. Now, this will be something that we're going to be automating a little bit more. So this is not even in the right election here. Let me go over to the right election. Florida, Volusia, 2020 primary. And this is one where it has a different name here. But in this particular program, you can use a flat view, and then you can look at everything at once without it being a tree. And now we want to look for that 22304 and find that. Now we do have a phase here that I'm not going to be able to show you from the front end, where if there is any discrepancy, you would just click on it, it pulls it up. 22304, there it is. Michael Bloomberg. Okay, there it is. Now this thing is stretched somehow. I don't see the stretch here, but this has been kind of a tricky problem because the, excuse me, can't take that call right now, because what happens is the scanner will just kind of jam up a little bit and not stop completely, but just pause, and then the scan lines will continue, and it'll look like it's stretched. I don't see the stretch here. Sometimes it's really obvious, but these are all shifted down somewhat from the original master. That red line image that I showed you before is the master template. And we generate the XY coordinates, but they're not always going to match exactly. So then we have to realign them based on the location of these timing marks on that ballot. That's why those numbers are there. So to answer Lulu's question, anybody can look as much as they want and see that our result, and their result too, comes out with Michael Bloomberg in this case. All right, and so that's how that is done. Now in this case, I can't demonstrate for this one the comparison, which I would love to do, but this particular election we did not get the cast vote record, because then it spits out exactly what the differences are. Yeah, John, you want to say something?
Yeah, just a question is, so basically your system, what you just took us back to is the file number, that's 2304, and so your system will flag, and then you can go right to the image and do an adjudication.
Well, that's
I mean, determine what was it really a vote or not.
Well, let me get to the adjudication. I'll point it out here.
Then I got part two to that too, but go ahead.
I'm not going to be able to do the adjudication here, but essentially, let's go through.
For lack of a good word, I'm calling it, because I spent a week in Maricopa witnessing them do auditing and adjudication. It was a fascinating, welcoming process.
Well, what we can do right away is just get the final report here. So what the final report does is it just adds up our cast vote record that we generated ourselves. And we can compare that high level with the high level report that they provide. And that doesn't take really any time to run, because all that does is just adds up the marks. So it goes through those marks, it goes out through those 48,000 records and totals up the votes from the 48,000 records and produces a list of you can see here that because we make a record in the marks file for every single bubble. There's one record per bubble. And so there's 557,733 records of marks data. That's quite a bit more than the 48,000 ballots, because it's every single bubble. And then we total these up, and you can see Joe Biden got 15,000. The leaders, Bloomberg did pretty well here with 2574. Bernie Sanders, the second place winner at 5977. The total number of votes was 25,995 for this for this contest, because remember, the whole range of ballots is basically cut in half because of the partisan nature of this election. And for the Republican Party contest, you had Trump get 20,800, 93% out of 22,140. It was only Joe Walsh and Bill Weld on the other candidates there. So this is the result that we can make even without any kind of cast vote record. So if we don't get the cast vote record, we can still process all the ballots, extract all the votes, and come up with this total right here. So that is, yeah, that's where we are there. Now let me go over to make sure we get if there's any more questions, make sure that you either just speak up or let me try to transfer.
Well, those two numbers that so the Republican, how many were there? And then Democrat, if you add them both up, they come up to the number of ballots that you're looking at. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm looking at just quick checks that I would do.
Yeah, so basically the contest ballots in this contest added to this number of ballots here is going to be roughly speaking, I think maybe with just a couple of exceptions, 48,537 ballots. We could check and see. And that should also equal the original like BIF report, which talked about just the inventory of ballots. And that can be super, let me point out, this BIF report is super useful because it should be something that we can get and process from them. In other words, the cast vote record that just talks about the ballot inventory is pretty useful. Then we can keep track of, well, how many ballots did they receive, you know? And if you do a risk limiting audit, you still have to do all of that. You still have to keep track of, you have to do the inventory of all of the ballots. I kind of skip over that. They say, well, you get the ballot manifest and that's done by a separate system. And they don't say how to do it. You know, it's a pretty difficult thing to actually account for all 48,537 ballots. Now, if you're doing this by hand, you have to have those in somewhere in the system, you know, identified with numbers or something so you could find them if you were doing a ballot comparison on it. So this is something where, let's say you wanted to do a risk limiting audit. You could do this and still find out where all your ballots are. You could still use that to figure out which ones you're going to pull and so forth. You could do a lot of it this way, and that's why we were thinking about offering all of that functionality. We could offer to do the same types of things that the risk limiting audit software that they use does, but we can also do ballot image audits. So we can do it from both of them. You want to do a risk limiting audit? Fine. We can help you by telling you where all the ballots are and help you choose them and so forth, and go ahead and you can then compare them with the ballot image if you want, double check it that way. We're not against risk limiting audits. We just think that they're really dang hard and hard to do because when the contests get really tight, it means a lot of ballots to process. Okay, so let's see here. I think for the most part, I've covered. I wanted to go back here before so that this was a report. So let's look at this list. So we have the pre-check. I want to go over each one of these. This is where we just check that the files are in order and you can get something done. Then the pre-scan goes over all of the ballots and does a recognition of the frame and what all the styles are that they have numbered. And then we go through a styles generation, which has a number of phases. I'm not going to try to describe it all here, but this is where you figure out where the bubbles are. Okay. Now there's a lot in that. I just want to say this generating styles is the tricky part, because once we get the style generated, extracting the vote is basically nothing. I mean, we basically go through all the ballots again. There's still a lot of work there, but now we know where the bubbles are and we extract which ones are which. And then what they do is just make the report. So they only do They do, if you're the voting system vendor, all you have to do is extract the vote, you know where the bubbles are, and create a report. We have to do a pre-scan, generate the styles, figure them all out, then extract the vote, and then compare it with their cast vote record, figure out where the things are. Then the adjudication phase is where we look at each one of the issues if we want to, you know, but you don't have to, if it compares, and let's say, and also we realize that in the pre-scan here, when you look at the log for that, remember that there were some ballots that we did not process here. Those would still be left out because these are things that we can't figure out what the ballot is. And this list is shrinking as, you know, time goes on. This number of things here has been shrinking dramatically because we're reducing, we're, you know, basically improving our algorithms so that we don't, our code doesn't get screwed up. These sometimes are just like stupid screw ups. You know, there may be a piece of lint, a corner folded, or something weird about the ballot, a streak on it or something, and it just makes it so the algorithm that we used didn't work.
Did you know if these were vote by mail or ballots, or were they precinct ballots?
These were all precinct ballots.
Okay.
It could be though that this one here, where there's 0 bits, and this one here, these might be BMD ballots. But any of these that have any of these bits here, generally at this point, when we're doing the BIF and we're doing a preview like this, we're only, it still looks at the BMDs and tries to figure them out, but it does not it doesn't try to do the alignment or anything. It doesn't have to align those. It just but I will say this is important. The BMD ballots, there's a lot of discussion about this. The BMD ballots have barcodes, either a couple of barcodes at the top, or they have some linear barcodes at the top, maybe those square ones, QR codes, linear ones, and then stuff written below that, which is the ballot summary of who voted, what your votes are. What our software does is read the ballot summary in the bottom, mainly, to figure out what the votes are. We do not rely upon the barcodes. However, we do check them. We say, okay, did the barcodes match what we think they should be? It turns out it's sometimes harder than others to figure out the barcodes, what they mean. But we think it's important that we're reviewing the human readable text that the voter may have verified, because they can't verify very easily those barcodes. So that's, I think, a superior thing about our system. Risk limiting audits do the same thing. They're going to be able to look at what the voter looked at, certainly. So, but down here, as we go through this, I just wanted to make sure. So we do a pre-check, the pre-scan, we generate the styles, we extract the vote. Then we do, if we have the CVR, we do a comparison. And what that does is it takes the marks block and it takes their section of their CVR out, and it sends that to a Lambda, and it compares those 200 ballots. It takes enough time so that we dish those out as well. And then we get back chunks of comparison result. And then those are boiled down to tell us where there's any issues. And it's pretty nice to see that. I'll have to do that in another session, but
that's a really interesting point that these are on the documents, the ESNS image. Then after you read that, you're looking at the cast vote record. Let's say it's a separate document with the same number, difference by an I or a C, and you're comparing that too.
Well, we don't know. Okay, so let me make sure I clarify that. We don't look at those cast vote record files that they produce. We could, but the way it's working now, we're only looking at the cast vote record data file that we may get, which we prefer because, you know, you could leave out a whole bunch of files and you could leave out those cast vote records too. You never know. We need to actually, we want to have that full data file. I see that Paul Burke, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. I see that you're tracking the bubbles. have you also put in the software to look for stray marks, which could in fact be that black line vertically down the page, and or circle around the candidate's name, and or a yes written in next to the candidate's name? In a lot of jurisdictions, those should count as votes. And my guess is that ES&S and Dominion rarely count those as votes.
Yes, that's true. We found that our methodology, because we use this adaptive method, we use a little bit bigger domain around the bubble than the bubble itself. And so it isn't a stray mark checker, but we do have to look for write-ins, and write-ins are a tricky part of this, where in many states, you don't have to fill in the bubble and the write-in still is valid if something is there. That is something that on the whole is a edge case. In other words, the vast majority of what we want to concentrate on, especially in this election, has nothing to do with the write-ins. There's not going to be any write-ins of note. We want to look at mainly the presidential and congressional and Senate contests, the big ones. Now, not to say that we're not interested in the small ones when they're consequential, because there are many times where there's some mayor's race or something that's very consequential. Getting the other marks on the ballot and figuring those out, there is some possibility of doing that, but it is kind of a tricky question. Like, are you going to look for every single mark on the ballot and do something? At this stage, we're not doing that. So it's an open question about whether that's going to be useful to do or not. There are some things you pointed out though. Streaks on the ballots, just lines going down, like every inch on a line. I don't know how it happens, but I've seen that. Just ballots that are just so dark that everything turns black. Everything in the boxes is black, and you can still see the bubbles, a lot of them, but they're super black. There's a lot of this sort of crud in the system. A lot of the images aren't very good. I think this is one reason why they're afraid to let them out, because we can find out how bad these machines are. Generally speaking, I'm pretty impressed with the quality of the images, and I think that there's nothing stopping us from using this as a really solid check on the elections, to the extent that it can. I want to go over one more thing before we close the meeting here, and that is
I can just add one thing to that, Ray, is that because you just brought up a really good point, and Paul did too. That week I spent in Maricopa, I was very close to the adjudication process, where they have two people, and this comes out of the vote by mail. If you vote at a precinct, if you overvote, it will kick the ballot back out or give you notice that you have an overvote, you have to approve. So they usually don't adjudicate those. In the vote by mail, Maricopa had 800,000, but for the purpose of rounding numbers, let's say it was 1 million, not 800,000. They actually adjudicated 10% of all the vote by mail ballots. 70% of the ballots were write-ins. And what triggers the adjudication process is the bubble. If you fill it in, that is the notice, because that's what it reads. It takes a human to do that. So 70% was that. Most of them were Mickey Mouse, some were real, but they have to record them all. The other 30% were overvotes. But these are people at home voting, and in the morning they voted one way, and a day later the mother or wife or husband said, hey, how come you voted for that person? He did this and that. So they change it, and they cannot erase it. So they draw a line right through it, and they fill another bubble in. Now the system reads that as an overvote, but in the Dominion and ES&S system, it will tag that ballot. And if there's an adjudication process in Maricopa, they do it live. They have 18 boards of people, 2 people each, with a judge above them. And if 2 people agree that that is a overvote, it stays an overvote. If I say I'm a Democrat, that's a vote for a Dem, and the other person says Republican, the judge comes in, makes that decision. They do this in about a minute time. The old system, which me and Steve witnessed in Detroit, is that they have to chase down a ballot redo the ballot again. And that process holds up a number of people. In Maricopa, it took 12 minutes to do the adjudication, and it got so far behind that many elections for years, they were not doing this process. And so basically, the future is here, and with what you're doing and bringing is only going to make election results more accurate, which is happening with your process and also with the process that's happening in Maryland. So thank you for everything that you're doing, Ray, on this. I'm very grateful how you've moved the ball forwards when it comes to making elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verified.
Yeah, thank you. Now let's take a look at this question, though, because it's a good one. In this particular election that we audited here, or we ran the system on, we see that out of the 25,995 total votes in the Democratic contest, there were 136 overvotes where people seemingly voted for two, and 123 undervotes where they seemingly didn't vote for anybody at all. Who would do this? Who would fill out a ballot and go to there's only one contest. So what are you going to do? Not vote at all? Why did you go to this? These all should be reviewed, and our system, I can't set it up for that right now to show you, but I could, if we had time, maybe another thing, go in and take a look at these overvotes and undervotes and take a look at them. That would be the process of adjudication. We'd at least look at, and the report we had before was like a regular web page, and you could just quickly click on them and then say what the result was, and then that would be the adjudication, where basically you're filling out a little kind of like a voting form and saying what the vote actually is, and then you covered it. So you've decided this is what it is. If the person cross it out, put no, and then put it really dark and check marked it and said yes, that you could look at that and say, okay, this is how I determine in this case what it means. In Michigan, you can't do that. If they do it for both, no matter how much yes and no there is, it still counts as an overvote. But in California, you're supposed to use every little piece of evidence to figure it out. Here is quite a few. We got 259. Down here, we had only 30 overvotes, but 113 undervotes. Again, they didn't vote for anybody. Those would be all reviewed. Now, would you need to review them? Well, in this case, I wouldn't waste my time, because Donald Trump got 20,800 votes and the other guys got basically nothing. Are you going to look at these to see if they're any good? You'd have to have a lot more than that. Now up here, you have a difference between Biden, 15,000, and Bernie, there's 10,000 here. So are these going to make up 10,000? Don't waste your time. You might want to, just for fun, to see what they are and how the system is going. We're all game for that. But when you're short on time and you just want to find out what's going on, you wouldn't waste your time looking at these if there's a 10,000 vote gap. Now, let's say there's only a 50 vote gap. You're looking at every single one of these, aren't you? So that's the way it goes. All right, let me go over to this. I wanted to cover these roles that I recently defined so that we could have people involved in the system and helping us without actually being the techie who's going to be doing every little thing. All right. So there's different levels of technology expertise that we can leverage. First, as a public advocate, of course, anybody can do this, and everybody here probably is doing, but I certainly do that more. Contact public officials and insist that they preserve ballot images and make them available. You don't need technical expertise to do this. It helps, of course, to know what you're talking about, but we need attorneys to help us with this. And thank you, John, for all your work and Audit USA of doing these lawsuits with regard to this public advocacy. Now, the next step is, and we're really working on this, is the poll tapes volunteer. We need people to go out and get these poll tapes, and we're introducing this CloudWatch application, which I'll discuss in just a second, to help us go out and get those. And there's some other groups that are doing it as well. We're going to be pooling the data, hopefully all together, so that we can, because it's a big job. We need to collect at least want, we need to get at least one precinct from every county of the 125, at least one from every county. And we'd like to get 14 minimum, but we'd like to have more like 50 from every county. So we're talking about around 1,000 precincts that we would like the data for to have a good chance of detecting possible hacking in those things, such that we can legally access the ballot images and to a court case. So this is something that's going to happen on election day. Doesn't take a lot of high technology, but you do need to have a smartphone or some way to take pictures and then upload them. Next thing is a requester.
Ray,
Yeah.
Susan, could I just
Yeah.
say one quick thing? You
Absolutely.
said get the poll tapes. I just want to make it clear we're talking about getting photographs of the poll tapes that are posted in many places on the polling place door. And people just have to go around 7 p.m. and take pictures of those poll tapes. So I just want to make clear it was photographs when you talk about getting the poll tapes. Thank you.
Right. I guess I don't have much of anything here to cover that, but I do have just a quick, quick diagram that I can show about CrowdWatch so you understand what it is. It is the key thing about, where this is not in this thing here. It is, let me get rid of this. Okay, so let's not do this at all. And instead, I want to look at this. So basically, CrowdWatch is a smartphone app. These are some of the pictures of the screens. And the important thing about CrowdWatch that the other applications don't have is that it has the watch points database that we're going to be initializing for where the people should go to those precincts. And it'll say these closest watch points, which will be in for this poll tapes issue, which will be the precincts. And then it'll give you directions how to get there, get a map. The person goes there, it'll give them instructions of how to take pictures of it. And what it does is you can start your own watch point if you know there is something there that you want to watch. You go to the place and take a picture. You can share it. Here's what the picture looks like. You can post it then, and then it goes up to the cloud. You can add information, and then you can share it to your social media and ask other people to get involved. I think that's going to be an important part of it. And then it does, that's the end of that thing that I wanted to show. Now let's go back over to my list. This thing pops down every now and then and I can't see it. So CrowdWatch or other applications to go there, and that CrowdWatch will be something we're going to announce pretty soon. Now a requester is somebody who tries to get the ballot images or does get them. And unfortunately, a lot of times this is too late. It's after the election is over. So that's why these poll tapes volunteers, we probably should have something in between here where somebody uses the poll tapes to legally demand that we get to the ballot images. So this kind of is either a public records request, and if you get them, knowledge of flash drives and so forth, because sometimes we have to get them on flash drives. But essentially, and I didn't cover this in the application, and I should have. Let's go back to it really quick. When you're in here, when you go to the elections, and there is a given election like this one, there is the election files. And when you're here, you can upload a file. Or if there's already a file on the system, you can adopt it. But essentially, you're going to be getting the ballot images and clicking upload file. And then you on your system, you choose the file or from a thumb drive, and then you say upload, and it'll upload directly to the system so you can process it. If there's any problem with this, then we can help people get them up, because sometimes they're just so big and they're so hard to handle sometimes. it's beyond what the average person can do sometimes. All right. But we're trying to make it so a lot of people will be able to do that. Ruth, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Let me unmute. Yeah, so being of a certain level of sophistication in terms of years, the taking pictures at the places that post these poll lists or whatever, the ballot images, I don't know, I don't know the correct term, but anyway, that sounds like a great thing for me to do and for me to pass on to other people in my age group. So the crowd watch, you showed pictures of like a park, but is that the camera that takes the pictures of the polling things that are attached to the door, the images of the polling strips or whatever?
Yeah, we'll have some pictures, appropriate pictures of that. And what we also wanted people to do was take pictures of any activity that was unusual at
Sure, exactly.
And I see Dan Wolf has raised his hand. We want to get him involved in this discussion, but essentially there are other tools to do it, but there's so many, there's such a big ask here to get all this done. We want to try to get everybody involved in it. Okay, go ahead, Dan. I see you popped your head in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a really quickie to the questioner. Our app called Actual Vote allows you to very easily take pictures of the poll tapes, the strips like cash register receipts that are posted outside the polling places in Florida and many other states, and they're just automatically uploaded to our website, and then there's a process for analyzing them and comparing them to transcribing them, analyzing, so on.
Can you say that again? Can you say the URL or where we're supposed to go to download that when it's ready?
Yeah, go to democracycounts.org. Democracy Counts, all one word. And but wait a few days, because our new website with all the explicit instructions is about to go live.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And by the way, we did put together a kind of a coalition of groups because it is between, there's something called CSA 2020 that looks like it might have some merit. There's also, well, Democracy Counts, the Actual Vote application that Dan's group put together, and also CrowdWatch. We have also the thing called Photo Finish, which is kind of a cool name. That's being done by Jennifer Cohn, and hopefully we can get all this data put together. Now the thing is that when we're capturing the data of these polling tapes, we may not need it, okay, but we don't know which ones we need, okay, up front. We've got to capture it. We're only going to need it from those states that wind up being really close or get into dispute. Then we really need it badly. So we'll probably capture a lot and not actually process it or determine what's on those poll tapes unless we get into a need to really get to the ballot images, and we need it when it's close. So I guess it's Mark Shipley. Do you want to make a comment? Your hand's up.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, I can't find the CrowdWatch app on iPhone store. Do you know
it's not yet in the stores. It's just about to come into the stores. I will be announcing it soon. And we have developers working on both the Android and the iPhone app. So yeah, it'll be there, and so but it does take some time. They have to approve it, and it just came out, so it's going to take a few more days. Okay, so I think these hands are left over, I believe. So.
No, mine isn't.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Ruth.
Okay, could you or Steve or anybody else tell us, meaning myself and people in California, I mean, obviously I'd love to drive to one of the swing states, but that's probably not going to happen. So what do you think we should do, people in quote unquote non-swing states? What is the best thing that we can do to help out?
Okay, yeah, that is something that there is something that with CrowdWatch. Let me try to get the Yeah, so this thing about Zoom is that it stomps on everything in front, so I can't actually browse anything. I wanted to get to the little picture that I have of the CrowdWatch application, so you can understand. It actually goes over and from your desktop when the time comes, or actually your smartphone, if you want to do it that way, you can help us. And let me show you what that is. See here. So what we do is when we get the picture, okay, it goes up to the cloud, and then there's a need to process that somehow. And there's a first step, which is just a filter.
We're not seeing that screen. We're
I
still.
know. I'm getting it here.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. As I'm talking, I'm trying to get it so I can show you. Here it is. And I'll move it over there. Yeah. Okay, now let me make that big.
Well, you can still tell us the process.
Yeah, so the process here is you take the picture, it goes up to the cloud. Can you see this? Can you see the picture?
No, but that's okay.
Well, let me get it so that it's showing, because that's the whole idea.
It's showing.
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh, you
I
can't.
can't. What is wrong with my thing?
Okay, so I think I just accidentally moved it out of the way. Let me move it back over here. Right there. Okay. You can see that hopefully. Now
I can't, but that's okay. I'll listen.
okay, well, it's not that detailed anyway. So
Got
the thing is that we
it now. It's just a little small.
all right. So the images go to the cloud. They can be pictures or videos. And then right here, there's actually a filter so that we can isolate hackers and stuff, or porn people or whatever, people that are trying to hurt us. And then it goes to this crowdsource analysis platform called Zooniverse. That's what we're using right now. It actually was started for scientific research, crowd-based review of images. And I invite you to go to Zooniverse. They have some interesting projects there, like you can look in Wild Watch Kenya and see if you see any giraffes or baboons and zebra. I've seen all of
After the election.
Yeah, so this is just, that's what their system does, but we're going to use that for crowd-based analysis of all these pictures. Not so much the poll tapes, but anything that we see, like people with AR-15s at drought boxes, doing intimidation, anything of that nature. So that is what that system does. So anybody at home can help is the idea. We want to get people helping without having to have a whole bunch of infrastructure to support it. And now let's go through these, because some of these still might be appropriate for you, Ruth. We have the poll tapes volunteer of getting those requester of trying to get this might be something that somebody can do, but then the uploader is a little bit more higher end, limited expertise. So of having the ballot images from someplace and getting it up to the site, and that's all that you do. What we're calling the conductor is somebody who actually is a fairly high level of sophistication, who would be able to work out the details and make sure that the system is running. And then reviewing. As the audit files are created, we need people to actually look at those proofs and see if they're correct. So anybody can do that too. So just kind of watching the system and getting used to seeing what you need to review, to verify. The idea is that we want to have lots of eyes on this so that there's no question that everything is right. And that's what the reviewer does. Adjudication, people that want to help do that, or certainly a subscriber just to follow along. So there's different levels here of watching, and just watching is important. You don't have to be feeling like you're doing something. Watching and saying, okay, we had a number of people watch us do this as well. That's certainly important. And that's just for this aspect. There's a couple of other things with regard to CrowdWatch that we want to support, such as getting the pictures of videos really of the audit the audit random draw, very important phase of drawing out those random numbers. Okay, so we're kind of going longer than I want, but go ahead, Daniel, your hand's up. What would you like to say?
Oh, I just wanted to throw in that that our process allows people to collaboratively do transcription and comparison. So, for instance, you know, if you're at a polling place and you and you want to monitor that particular polling place, you know, you can keep track of the numbers there even before our process really kicks in hard. You can watch the numbers, and then as soon as the numbers for that precinct go up on the Secretary of State website, you know, you can flag, like through right now it would be an email to us. You can flag that these numbers aren't adding up, you know, and then we would pay greater attention to that particular precinct. You know, we'd look at our photographs, verify that's true, and you know, and then we would. But, you know, we would probably focus in on that precinct or the polling place or even the county or whatever if we saw a pattern emerging. Then you can also participate in the collaborative transcribing. You'd actually go into a Google sheet and, you know, look at the videos which are linked from our website and actually transcribe data. We'll probably be doing that on a random basis at first, you know, in order to test for irregularities. And then anywhere we saw, you know, irregularities happen, then start broadening. Kind of it's a little bit reminiscent of risk limiting audits. You see something, dig in more.
Yeah, thank you. And I just am showing here on my share the sign up form on our website. It's actually, and I also put in the chat box the well, I didn't paste it in there. There it is. I put in the link. We had this campaign for a number of years called Eyes Open. We learned, and it's an interesting fact, that sets of eyes like this, even if they're just crudely copied, are very psychologically active. They put just some photocopied eyes by the, you know, honor system coffee nook, where you're supposed to give 25 cents or something for a cup of coffee. You know, some people don't give anything. And all of a sudden donations went up by 3 times just by putting a copy there. So Eyes Open, and having eyes of people, volunteers in the room or wherever you can to watch them is really important, even if you don't find anything, because when you're watching, nothing happens. This is the thing. So we have a sign up form where you can go on and tell us where you are, and we will make sure that you're informed and you can choose a role. Also, we're working with Emily Levy and her scrutineers to make sure that all of her volunteers there know about at least our point of view about things that you can work on. They have a lot of other things to work on as well. So that's at scrutineers. I think it's scrutineerscommunity.org. Would you like to say something about that, Emily, your scrutineers?
First, I want to say that you haven't pasted the link to your sign up form yet. It hasn't come through on the chat. What?
Oh, everyone in the waiting room. I didn't want to go to waiting room. Okay, that's why it went to. Thank you for that, because I didn't notice that. It was, I says everyone, but not. It's going to the waiting.
What else did we miss?
Okay, there it is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
There's the sign up form. And so I think we probably should close down the meeting. Just let's make sure that I've covered the main chat room issues. We have democracy counts. I'll be sending around to everybody, sign up, get on the form, and then we can either this ballot image auditing or also traditional auditing oversight. Super important, because as I said, the traditional audits, even though they're not that trustworthy, do check that the ballot images are correct. So we need those to be done as well, and we need to give oversight to those.
So all of those are things that we're trying to help train people on in scrutineers, and hoping to really work closely with you, Ray, because of both AuditEngine and the CrowdWatch and your expertise at the in-person monitoring at election offices. And so you and I need to circle back with each other and get farther on
Yeah,
getting
of
those
course.
trainings together for.
Now that we've gotten, I'm so happy to be past this milestone, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot to do.
Ray, may I ask one more question before you're done?
Of course.
Okay. So what's really, really notable about what you've done here is you found a way to do these image audits without the help of the vendors or the officials necessarily, apart from getting the data. And that is really what's so different from what Maryland does with Clear Ballot. And it's really, really notable. So, but I wonder two things. Obviously, you doing that first piece of figuring out the ballot style before you can run your analytics it's a pretty steep hill. How much time does it take to do that? Because what I'm thinking about here is, where could this tool be used if there are fights in November? And the second piece of that is with what you're talking.
Before you go on, where can this be used in November? Is that what you said?
Yes, exactly. Like where, I mean, I know you can theoretically say everywhere, but the thing is, like how much time does it take for you to get set up to run this stuff? Because what's happening is you're going to have people making all kinds of competing claims about the legitimacy of if it's close. And the question then is, what's evidence are people even talking about? So that's what I'm wondering, how quickly this could actually.
Okay, well, let me, maybe I can try to answer that. And the answer is it depends. I mean, it depends on a lot of things, but one of them is just like, what is the style, the scope of the styles. Number one, we looked at a contest with only 2 styles, but they still had 149 different card types. Well, what our system does now is it still processes all 149 different card types, and it gives you a report in the BIF report after it does, actually in the styles report. It tells you, we didn't cover that, but it tells you what were the styles and what were the codes on the card, and then also what were the contests. Now, we know up front what the contests are and what all the candidates are in the contest. We know that up front. This is information that we have to get, though, for the system. It needs to know if it's not in the cast vote record, we have to get it some other way. Now, if we get the cast vote record, we'll be able to process it and find out what are all the contests and what are all the options in each contest. Then with our new method, which is OCR first, it kind of helps us figure it out pretty well. But there are some adjustments that have to be made. Sometimes, and at first, I'll be perfectly honest with you, there are times when we're going to have to go in and do some changes to the code to accommodate new things that we see. Realize that when we started this, we did not know what we were going to encounter at all. We had one set in Dane County, then we got some in Florida, and we got the San Francisco one, and we have a few different style things.
Totally appreciate that.
So we're still on a learning curve, and will be for a while until we get some more standardization in this industry, such as it would be great if we had a standard ballot. Everybody uses this ballot.
Well, okay.
Why not?
The other thing is, I'm hearing, when you're talking about all the monitoring tools and, the ballots, the crowd watch stuff, I'm on these other calls where I hear about groups that are trying to do some stuff like this, but they're not quite doing this. For example, the Lawyers Committee on a call on Friday said they already have 20,000 lawyers signed up across the country. Now, if these folks were even knew about, CrowdWatch and could make that as part of their polling place tours, which they routinely do, and what's her name, who recently left, Barbara Barnwine at Earthlink, whatever, is her email. She was the head of that. I mean, I'm just wondering, how, I'm thinking aloud here, but I'm hearing a lot about a lot of groups that are trying to do different things that are similar, but they're not all in sync yet. And, that I'm just pointing.
Well, I do think that, this happens during election season. You have all of a sudden a lot of groups sprout up, and over the 4 intervening years, most of them disappear. And so we've been around now for like 15 years doing this. We're not going to disappear in between. We have a lot to do in between. And CrowdWatch is not just an election machine. It can be used for anything. It can be used for, say, police brutality review.
Well, I heard about that too. I mean, that's the other thing that people are really worried about.
Yeah, and we need to have, essentially, think about it, citizens oversight. This is the concept. We need to have all the citizens, all the public really watching our government, and CrowdWatch is the tool that we've really wanted to have for that kind of thing for a long time. It was a last minute thing where we were working on AuditEngine mainly, and then we saw that we wanted to try to provide something for the ballot box support. And people asked me, what would it cost to do a full, perfect oversight over this election? It was in the millions of dollars just to have the staff. We'd have to have thousands of staff members. And I said, it's impossible to hire those people. Just to hire them is such a big project that it's not going to happen. So we had to basically skip all of the infrastructure and get down to the bottom, the people at the bottom doing it, and then into a mechanism where they can submit it and then review it. That is the thing. And we weren't focused on the poll tapes. It isn't something that we've targeted at first, but as we saw the need being high there, and also it's a bigger problem than any one group can handle. So I don't think it's a good thing to say, oh, well, there's a group doing that, let's let them do all of it, because it's too much of a responsibility for one group to take on, to say, okay, now you're responsible for doing oversight for this entire thing and no one else gets involved there. No, it's just like, it's a bigger kind of a more diversity of tactics is the concept I like, where you allow many different types of tactics to be used. They might vary a little bit, and it's not one agenda and one thing that can be then infiltrated and taken down. That's another issue that we're looking at. Now, we want to close this down, but
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I see 2 more hands coming up. 3 participants raise hand. So let's go to Jennifer Tanner. You haven't had a say yet. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Susan Pynchon, are you still on the call?
I think she was.
Yes, I am, Jennifer. Hi.
Yeah, Susan, do you think it's appropriate to talk about what we're doing in this context of poll tapes and getting all the volunteers to work together? It's up to you.
Why don't you just mention it?
Yes, you want me to, sure. You want me to just summarize quickly?
I do, please.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so Jennifer really spearheaded this, I think, but the idea is really collaborate amongst a lot of groups to get the poll tape verification done. So we're calling ourselves the poll tape verifiers. That would be everybody in every different group would also be a poll tape verifier, Emily's scrutineers, and there's nobody in charge of that. It's just groups collaborating to verify poll tapes. And then the verification of the poll tapes might help to be able to demand ballot images, which are hard to get in some places. But if we had proof through the poll tapes that there were discrepancies in the vote count, then it might be possible to then get the ballot images in a timely way or in a court case. So Jen, we're looking at, I'm trying to contact the unions, the head of the unions, the national unions, to direct their members to photograph poll tapes, which would instantly give us thousands of volunteers, and the unions are very involved in elections. So I'm hopeful on that route, but I don't have an answer yet. And then law students have been another thought. If the lawyers committee, if they wanted to hang around the precincts and take pictures of poll tapes when they were done with their duties, that would be fantastic. So any groups that might collaborate on this, because it's going to require hundreds or even thousands of volunteers. And Jennifer, again, had the idea of trying to bring everybody together. Jennifer, you want to speak to that?
The one thing that we're like really thinking we're going to need is lawyers. And I don't know, Steve Rosenfeld, you were saying something about you've got a group of lawyers. Well, we could tell them what we need them to do, because what we were thinking of, and Susan really is the expert on this, every precinct has different laws, because what she did is she tried to do this in 2018. She got permission to get the poll tapes. She knew what the thing was. She even got a letter, but she didn't hand the letter out to everyone. So when the union people went, they were denied access. And so the idea is, if we can find out, and that's Susan's going to find out, every precinct, what you need, the law.
Every county or every state.
Every county, yeah, however it is. And then each person that's going to go there has this paper to say, no, this is the law, and then have a backup of lawyers that somebody could call and say, because somehow the lawyer name brings clout to it, and say, no, my lawyer has told me this is the law, something like that. That's kind of the loose idea of it.
Okay, good. Let's not do a lot on that subject right now. What we can do is another Zoom, and I think a little bit downstream, an announcement for CrowdWatch as we get, when it's actually in the Android store, and we'll want to get at least, from our point of view here. But I do support that cooperation, and look, we're just trying to help. And I know Dan has certain things in place that other groups are not going to have, especially the verification and so forth that they're going to be able to have being done on that. But I think there's two phases. I just want to mention this. There's really two phases to the poll tapes. It isn't necessarily verification. First step is just capturing the data. And capturing the data, I want people to realize we're not necessarily going to use all of the data that we capture, because some of it, probably most of it, won't be in a key, really in a trigger, in a state where, because, remember, these things come down to, at least in the presidential context, usually one, maybe two or three states that are like the states, the only ones that are making a difference. And so then we really need it. Or it may be that we say, there isn't a big contention here, and so we don't have to really dwell in, dig into it. But if it goes the other way, and there starts to be a lot of contention over this, which is likely, then having those, and across all of the states that we think might be the battleground states, and looks like we might have to add South Carolina, is going to be critical. So I agree with, and I want to thank Jennifer Tanner and Susan Pinchon for getting my head screwed on straight on this, because I think it is super important. And I want to compliment Dan Wolf for the work that he's done in advance on getting his group and experimenting. I don't want to, it's not like I'm trying. In fact, with CrowdWatch, I thought we weren't going to be working on poll tapes at all, and we're still think it's a viable approach. So it isn't something that, we said we're going to try to be competitive with these other groups. It's not at all. We want to try to cooperate and be everybody in the game. Okay, so Dan, is that a new hand up, or is that the?
Yeah, it's a new. Yeah, the old one, I was going to put it up, and I saw it was already up, and it should have come down. You neglected to put my hand down. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I'll try to do that better.
Just a quick word. The strategy of getting a little bit of evidence that can provoke a deeper dive, is really important here. That's the core of our strategy, of our legal strategy. Essentially, the idea is, we cannot, courts routinely reject motions for discovery that are not based on reasonably strong evidence. They call them fishing expeditions. So you have to provide evidence. Well, unfortunately, the culprits, whether it's error or unintentional error or actual criminal intention, the evidence is hidden from us. And so by getting these poll tapes, by getting these indications of intimidation and all sorts of anything that might be used strongly to argue for a potential outcome changing result, that can be taken in front of a judge. And the judge is then confronted with the issue of, does she want to wash her hands of it, or does she want to require that somebody look more deeply, like enjoin the certification of the results pending and a deeper look? So we're all about, you know, and you're all about at this level, you know, getting the deeper results that can throw doubt on the official results, therefore requiring, you know, precipitating, causing a judge to precipitate an investigation or a deeper dive. And at that point, if you get the ballot images, now we go to town with that. If you get law enforcement to roll into the election headquarters and start seizing computers and ballot boxes, we are really going to town.
Well, this is the thing about this audit engine, which really enables this, because in the past, we've had the problem is that it sometimes has been just fiscally, you know, financially unreasonable for us to pursue getting to the ballots and hiring the election officials to do all that work.
Sure.
Okay.
We just paid $800 to get ballots and to get polling tapes in Florida.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here, and so thank you for attending. I appreciate the over 30 people that probably up to 40 people have come and gone in on the meeting. And so thank you all for coming, and we'll be recording this. I want to ask everyone to go ahead and go to the sign up link that I put in, and let me just paste it in one more time into the chat box. If you'd like to save the chat, go to the chat box, hit the 3 buttons at the bottom and save chat. I will be circulating that sign up too in our email list. If you're not on our email list, let me know that as well. Make sure that you're on it. And thanks everybody here for attending. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we're getting this this big project. Let me tell you, this was a big project into its final, past the initial finish line at least, of being in operation for a whole year of working on this. So thank you very much, and be safe. Thank you for coming. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.